Welcome back to Fireside Frith, the official podcast of the Asatru community. We share stories, wisdom, and connection with heathens around the world. I'm your host, Susanna Wandering Star, and you're tuning into another segment of Meet the Board, where we introduce the people behind the scenes helping to guide TAC forward. Today, I'm excited to welcome back someone whose dedication to both their country and their spiritual path shines through in everything they do. Our guest currently serves as the treasurer on TAC's board of directors. Before stepping into this role, they also served as the military affairs director, advocating for heathen service members across the globe. Not only is this board member still actively serving in the military, but they've also held the role of distinctive religious group leader, helping to bring Norse pagan services to the military community. Their journey blends devotion, discipline, and deep care for both community and Frith. So grab your favorite drink, get comfortable, and join us as we welcome back David Nix to the show.
And you'll have to leave the mistake in there just because it's funny. Or have a good bloopers. You start a bloopers reel.
Right. Well, now that I can, when I first had you on the show in episode 3, I had to trim down a lot, unfortunately, because we were on a free account with this platform. And I could only do so much. And Corey keeps saying, well, why don't you just release what you cut out? And I was like, then I have to know what I cut out. So maybe I'll re-release that episode at a later time as like the full thing.
I can only imagine, because I'm sitting here thinking man, I haven't taken my meds in 2 days and I'm all over the place, looking around the room. I can only imagine what did I cut? And then getting distracted, oh yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah.
Might be some good opportunity for voiceovers.
For sure. So because he was on episode 3, his journey to Norse paganism can be found there. We're going to kind of skip over that section because we do go over that with every board member that I have on this segment. But if you want to learn more about that, check out episode 3.
And if anyone's wondering, a lot of the times this is what the board meetings are like too, because we just squirrel and all of these little things. It's that's not going to be in the minute notes, right? How do you capture
indistinctive growling or something?
Yeah. I definitely would, if people are interested in how I got into paganism, episode 3 does cover a lot of it. Definitely laid the foundation for why I'm still here and why I still do it. But yeah. I want the uncensored episode 3 now, because I don't remember what we talked about compared to what was broadcast.
Maybe I'll do a poll on here, and because you can do that on Spotify. If you guys want the full episode 3 without everything I had to trim down to make it fit in a certain time frame, vote yes in the poll. That being said, I know we did touch on this a little bit before, but we weren't interviewing you as a board member then. So how did you first get involved with the Asatru community and what led to that leadership role?
So I think should have been right around 2018. I put in my religious accommodation when I came back from Iraq. And in that conversation, the chaplain was like, hey, in the regulations, we can have volunteers that serve as DRGLs that can help lead things on post. And we kind of talked to it. I went to my brigade chaplain and the chaplain's assistant. We had conversations about it as a part of the interview process. And then shortly after that, I was reassigned to SWIC and went to be a civil affairs qualification course instructor. And while I was there, I bumped into a drill sergeant by Patrick Provost, who is now Mr. Provost and is a warrant officer. He and I met at a battalion meeting when I was in processing, because I was there to represent an upcoming exercise. And he's like, beer? Yes. Norse? Yes. And we had some wonderful conversations about that. And we slowly organized into a group of families. And that's when the numbers started coming out about how many people were on Fort Bragg. And we're like, you know what, maybe we should start a group. And then I joke with my daughter all the time when we play D&D that I'm naturally a bard. I'm just going to use bardic inspiration and vicious mockery all the time. So I ended up being voted as hey, you're the senior of all of us and you don't mind talking to people because it's kind of your job. Why don't you do it? So at that point, we started going through the packet, discovered in that process, you have to have an endorsing organization. So we started looking at it. We looked at Troth. A lot of us became Troth members. And then we looked at TAC and started having that conversation, which is then when it turned out that Dennis, the former vice president, actually lives down the road. And he and I were able to meet and talk about things and kind of discuss it, because the TAC had not endorsed anybody yet at that point. So he and I sat down and talked about it, had coffee a couple of times, talked through it. And that's when it came out that they were thinking about, because of all of the religious accommodations, adding a director of military affairs to the board so that they'd have someone that represented that. And that's when I learned about the TAC military outreach program, the Havamalls that they used to do, and kind of went through that entire process. And then I think it was, I'd have to go back and look, but I think it was mid-2019 or end of 2019 that they hosted the vote. I didn't think, being a new member, that I would be elected, but I was. And yeah, started that, and then was introduced to what it is to be in a nonprofit. And then it's been a learning experience ever since. Lots of politics, lots of personal feelings. Yeah. Into 2021, I was the director of military affairs. I took a short break because I was supposed to deploy, and then was asked to come back in, I think, 2022, and was reelected. And then from there, I think it's in the list of questions to talk about, like how I ended up as treasurer.
That's actually the next question. So
when I came back,
now as treasurer, how did you become treasurer then?
So for anybody that's not familiar with nonprofits, in the United States, there are only 3 positions that are legally required. It's the president, the secretary, and the treasurer. All of the other positions that exist in a nonprofit are agreements between the boards and the people they represent to fill the needs of what they're doing. So 2020, it all runs together after a while. I'm horrible with dates anyways.
Yeah.
I was around for both Seth and Topher. And for anybody that's been around a while, I was there when Seth stepped down, was present for all of that and why that occurred. And then when Topher took over, during that handover process, as we were starting to get back under our feet, they looked at creating a HOF for TAC in, I think it's Friendship, Indiana. And in that, they did a fundraiser to give money to the HOF to rebuild it and actually make it a public venue for people to attend. From that, we ended up with a lot of questions at the board level, people saying, hey, is that even legal? Can we do this? So in those discussions, it came out, per the bylaws at the time, you're allowed to request a third-party audit. The recommendation that I made in that last board meeting before everything went sideways was, we should. There's a lot of holdover from when Seth was here. There's a lot of accusations of embezzling money and misappropriations of funds, all the things that are scary for anyone handling money. I said we should do it. We'll publish it, we'll clear the air, and we'll have a fresh starting point that no one can question where we're at. It was denied and then became a really large fight internal, which resulted in the board requesting a vote of no confidence for the president and the vice president at the time because they were saying no, they were adamantly against it. They were violating the bylaws as we had them, and we were really scared that we would be legally in trouble from some of the accusations that were being made, and we wanted to look out for things. During that process, I think Jon Snow was out in, was he in Washington at the time? He was West Coast, and then Hyde is in Australia. I was the only one that could, and I told him, I was like, I'll take leave. I will go meet Topher, and we'll sign over the bank account, and I will become treasurer so that the money can be accounted for and taken care of. During that entire process, it became a legal fight. We had to refile the paperwork with lawyers, and this is something we talked about beforehand. And a lot of the community doesn't know it. For a lot of the community, they don't see me active on social media because I don't want to bring up old feelings and get involved in any of that. I want to see the community rebuilt. But during that process, I paid for the lawyer out of pocket. And so that we had legal representation, we could review the bylaws, we could review the situation and make sure we didn't lose our 501 status. Because specifically looking at it legally, we have a lot of Gothies that are performing marriages, 1, that are pagan, and then 2, in support of the LGBTQ plus community. And if we lost that status, we would no longer have those legal protections. So I paid for the lawyer out of pocket to be able to cover that. Jon Snow actually founded a second 501 that would be separate from TAC in case TAC had to close. But in that paperwork, I volunteered to take charge of the money to make sure everything was transparent, we were accounted for, and everything was legal. And that's how I ended up where I'm at, which has been a very interesting learning curve. Thankfully, Courtney, working nights and access to a computer, has helped look into a lot of things for us and make sure we were meeting stuff, and then trying to be as transparent as possible with the funds. So that's how I ended up where I'm at. A lot of fun, not necessarily where I want to be.
We appreciate your sacrifice.
Money's scary. Money's very scary.
Especially with a group this large, because the whole point of having a secretary and having these board minutes and getting those financial reports from you every single month, even if we haven't paid for anything, it's because that transparency needs to happen. If you are in our regular Facebook group, the public one, you don't have access to our minutes. But when you become a charter member, it is our legal responsibility with having a 501 that we're being transparent with our community, with our charter members. If you're a charter member, it is a free sign up. You get access to what goes on in our board meetings. They are public for charter members. Yeah, money is scary. We have these fundraisers we want to launch, but it's just like after the downfall that happened and like a little bit of what you were talking about, it's hard for people to trust and want to give their money to an organization if they don't know that it's being handled properly. So
yeah,
It's important.
I think that was the thing that we noticed during the downfall was there were a lot of issues leading up prior to Courtney taking over, me becoming treasurer, where under one of the previous presidents, we didn't actually have a treasurer. We had someone that was listed as a treasurer, but somebody else was handling the money. And then a part of the problem, during right before the most recent handover was there was only one person that had access to the bank, and they had the bank card and could just go spend it with no oversight. And it creates some interesting dilemmas even now. And like you're talking about with the fundraisers where we want to do things, for those that have been around a while, like you'll notice like the asatrucommunity.com emails now versus .org because of people holding the website hostage. That's still a fun one that would probably require a lot of beers and then would also get me in trouble. That might be let's have a conversation about how websites work. And who owns them.
Yeah.
It's money gets scary, like you said. And then for the charter members, especially now getting the website stood up again and being able to transition to a lot of those things, those funds add up quick. I mean, we just repaid for the website, and having those conversations of like, hey, what are our annual expenses going to be? And Jamin's been amazing as a board member and helping keep us on track. And I think, I know we're going to talk about it later in one of the questions, but when we talk about fundraisers, as a treasurer, like one of the things that we've talked about on the board is like, hey, let's figure out our operating costs for the year, figure out when the best time to do a fundraiser is, and then clear our operating costs for the year so that anything else we want to do, I don't want to say profit as a nonprofit, but like we can bring in that extra money to do those extra projects because we know that we'll continue to exist for a year.
Well, and that profit, anything that goes over our operation costs, that profit is distributed back to the community, not necessarily in money ways. But since our charter membership is free, we have the Heathen Library Project. That costs money.
I love that one.
I love it too, because so many people are like, I need some book suggestions, but also, books are expensive, and having a library, an online one where you can just...
Hey, I want to check this book out and read it.
Yeah.
What also makes that... I mean, I'm still working through the Gothi training, but like even I'm doing a master's program that is completely online right now. I finished my bachelor's through them. And that's the way their library is set up. You literally go in and it's like, here's what you need to read and reference. Here's your reading assignment. Being able to check those books out and not have that overhead cost going into something. You can do the reading. Like, I mean, my bookcase is in the corner, but I mean, I've got $2,000 or $3,000 worth of books that I've collected, and that's just the physical ones. Talking about being a DRGL and like money and stuff like that, we were spending $1,000 a year on books just to have in the classroom. Like, hey, we want you to read this. And your Army too, like we would 2062, we would give them a hand receipt that said, hey, like you want to take it home, like sign a hand receipt, go read it, come back. But if we're talking about this next week, read this. It does. I mean, Asatru being a religion of homework, like you got to have the books.
Yeah, you got to have the books. So yes, we are a nonprofit, but yeah, we do want a profit so we could give back. I know this is something that we talked about in recent board meetings, is having a shop. That way the shop can cover the overhead, just regular merch, t-shirts, hats, cups. If that covered the overhead, then we only have to fundraise for the projects. And that's a cool goal that we're going to try and reach this year.
Yeah, I mean, but like looking at it from a treasurer perspective, it also makes it easier if we fundraise specifically for a project, because then once those funds come in, we can literally give a check to the person that's going to do it. Hey, here's the money to fund this project that you're working on. And I think, because what was the other one we talked about? Because the library itself it ends up being, I think it was like $3,000 eventually to be able to have it at full capacity, right?
It's like $3,000 for the first year, but if we get a big discount if we sign up for a couple years, and it ends up being like around 7,000. It's a lot. But I mean, those are what makes Asatru more difficult than Christianity or Islam or Judaism. It's not a Torah. It's not the Bible. It is the Saga of the Icelanders. It's the poetic. It's the prose. It's background research. And I think that's the hardest part about Asatru is also because it is recreationist. There's some authors that are not aging well, that have had some issues. Like their books are still great references. But you have to have an open mind to understand that this is not law. We don't treat people like this anymore. And I've been looking at some books differently now that I'm a board member and now that I'm a leader of a community on the local level. I'm reading a lot more books And I didn't realize how expansive the sagas were, because there's like 10.
Everybody knows about that. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody
But
knows
then-
about these 10, but there's hundreds.
There's a couple that I didn't know about until I started, not as a board member, but as a practitioner. There are a couple of sagas that became recommended because they're like, hey, we make a joke. I love kinnings. Kinnings are my favorite thing about historical writings. There's a saga of two kings, and one of them is talking about how one of the sons has deer antlers and deer legs, and I lost it because I'm like, did he have deer legs or did he skip leg day? Is this a kinning? Like, are we? So like, you really, without getting into the books and reading them for what they are, you're going to miss a lot. And I think the library project is going to be one of the biggest ones in the next year that will help separate TAC again into being a learning organization, because you have to learn. You have to have access to the resources, and you have to have the time to read it. And I think the restructuring of the Gothar program that's going right now would be help too with the library for anybody that's done college degrees. Getting a reading assignment that says read this and give me your opinion and how does it relate to these subjects is going to be huge. And a lot of, unlike traditional religions, our Gothies are people that are volunteering to not enter into clergy like you do with the church, and that becomes your sole occupation, but they're volunteering and doing the training so they can better support their local members. And they're not going to have access to the resources. I mean, I've collected mine over 5+ years, including some less politically appropriate books, just because I needed to understand the situation. I'm really sad that they shut down my favorite website. You used to be able to go pirate books. So I do have a counterculture book that was recommended, and I think we've talked about it. I have a pirated copy that I give out to people where it's like, look, like, no, don't in any way go look for this book. I will give you the PDF article that you need to read. Right. And having that discussion of, with TAC specifically looking to counter white nationalism, unless you're actually reading the conversations that they're having and where their perspective comes from, you can't develop an actual educated argument against it and start to pick it apart.
And that's something we did talk about on the last episode that is not on YouTube, but it is on our audio-only platforms. Getting these books without supporting that author.
And I love that.
Yes.
Somebody's already paid for it. Go find it secondhand.
Yes. If you find it secondhand, like, I don't even care if it is inclusive or not. If I find it secondhand, and it's a Norse pagan book, I will pick it up, because like you said, it is important to understand their perspectives and why they think that they're right.
For the non-military members, like, my actual job for the last 14 years in the Army is civil affairs, and we've transitioned in the last couple of years to focus on transitional governance, which is focused on post-conflict. How do you transition back to civil authority? Being CENTCOM focused, it's Middle East focused. It's been a lot of like, all right, well, how do you de-ISIS someone? How do you have the conversations about radicalization, and what do those counters look like? And it's been really eye-opening looking at it from a white nationalist perspective too, of like, how do we address some of these issues so that you can develop, the Army calls it demobilization, de-radicalization, and reintegration. How do you identify these people, show them where they're wrong, and reintegrate them back into a society where they can be contributing members? And
it kind of reminds me of the therapists that work with people coming out of cults.
It is very similar when you get into the mentality. And this has been a long-going discussion of talking board-wise. Like, I'm not a protest person. Can't be a protest person. I can't, as a military member, be out there and be a part of it. And oftentimes protests they're not going to get after the root issues. I like activism and how it gets after things, but in my mind, standing out in front of an AFA Hoff is great to draw attention to them and try to pull people away, but you just end up ostracizing a community. And like you said, looking into books, there's a lot of publications that AFA puts out that are under the radar. And I think I shared it in one of our military groups, like, until you start pulling back the layers of who these people are, you may be inadvertently giving money to the AFA. And that gets into the education side of things, of being able to understand, like, where do the publications come from? What do we need to replace? And how do you actually address the issues? And we talked about World War II. Like, in some ways, we're dealing with Hitler Youth, where people are indoctrinated. But looking at it from a military perspective, like, there are grievances that exist that, unless those grievances are addressed, they're going to ostracize, and they're going to militarize. They're going to work in the background, and you're going to like the results even less.
Yeah, 'cause sometimes when you go to fight something, even if you have an honorable cause, if you go to them with a fight, that encourages them to fight back. It's sometimes, what is that? There's a saying, a wise man knows when to use words or the sword or whatever, something like that. I'm messing the quote up, but you know what I'm saying?
I get what you mean. I mean, well, that's like to use the G.I. Joe reference, is like, knowledge is half the battle, the other half is extreme violence. You still got to have the knowledge.
Yeah.
Even World War II, we're still dealing with Holocaust deniers. I mean, the Gaza-Israel conflict that's still existing, that's not just holdout from World War II. You can go back into, I think, even as early as like the 1800s, you start finding some of these issues of anti-Semitic behavior that is so based in history, like the wolf's hook. I don't know if you've talked about that on the podcast as far as symbology yet. You know, for anybody that looks into neo-Nazi symbols, the wolf hook pops up. It's not a Norse symbol, but if you dive back into the history of it, originally it was a protection marker. It was a property marker that was meant to denote this is where the line starts. And of course, it's one of those symbols that's been bastardized and appropriated, but the history of that symbol goes back so far that I'm having to find publications that are being translated from German to understand how we got to this point. Yeah, it's a good read, don't get me wrong. I don't know who you're supporting by buying it, so like I think I have a PDF copy because it's kind of the same thing where we dove into it to truly understand and be able to have an articulated argument of why yes, it is a powerful symbol, and in your personal practice you're using it at your own risk, but here's the history. Here's why it's a bad symbol and why it's being used now. And it's still actively employed in a couple of German and Ukrainian battalions now in their military symbol. And it makes it really fuzzy when you like, is that a Nazi symbol, or are they like actually pulling from historical references?
Unfortunately,
you have to err on the side of Nazi.
Yeah, and Nazis perverted a lot of symbols, and they used that ideology of frith and brotherhood and a lot of things that sound really good on paper to spread their ideology. And I think that's a big reason why neo-Nazis exist in America today, because you get these people who, for a long time, men were taught that you have to be this way, and women, you have to be this way. You know, as time goes on, well, women want jobs now. Women want to be business owners, and that's great. I think as a woman, I love that I can vote, but I think there's people that still want men are this way, women are that way, and then that also leads them to believe other things like anti-LGBTQ or any other kind of anti-Semitism.
Anything that they like doesn't exist within their spectrum of okay just becomes so bad. And I think I don't know that you and I have had this conversation, and we're squirreling really hard.
Yeah.
When you look at Ragnarok and the battle at the end, and I think we've talked about it offline, of like our values today would not match with our ancestors. There are going to be issues. Mm-hmm. And it really becomes like that battle is really just, so blue being friendly, red being enemy, they're primary colors, and blue and red together make purple. And at some point that line gets a little fuzzy when you're like, all right, is this a modern conception, or like what is evil? And I'd have to go back and look, but like I know like originally there was no word for religion in Old Norse. It was just the lifestyle. And it muddies the water a lot when you start looking at the historical roles by gender, by sexuality, all of those things. It gets muddy.
Yes, but you have to understand that humans, as civilization progresses, we evolve. We can go to grocery stores. We spend less time gardening. We spend less time.
I'm going to sound like RFK Jr., where I'm like, yeah, we go to the stores and we put poison in our body. Like,
exactly. Okay, see, like, I come from a farmer background, and you and I, we've talked about this extensively, how we want to have farms, and we're very much like trying to get back to that homesteading type lifestyle, because that really matches our lifestyle and our faith too.
And I think I love pop culture references included everything. It's like the Jurassic Park style of like, we were too busy asking if we could to ask if we should.
Yes.
Like, we're kind of
Yeah.
getting into some stuff where it's like,
But my point with that, though, is that as civilization evolves, we spend less time focusing on survival when we have more time to live. And with more time to live, we have
you really start
more...
to question some of the things that we've been doing.
Yeah. And like, why is it wrong to be a different skin color? I'm putting that in quotes because that is not wrong. It's not wrong. But it's like, why is it quote unquote wrong to be gay or anything like that? It's not.
Well, I love the Darwin argument of like, in nature, animals of bright colors and differences are celebrated because they're unique, and then you have humans and it's like different, bad. I'm like, all right, whatever.
Yeah, and that's really unacceptable.
It is, and I think, one, my major is not in biology or any of those things, but it's stepping back into the situation, and I've read some perspectives from some less favorable people, so I won't quote their names, but they point out a couple of things where it's like, or even like in America, like the Midwest dresses differently than the South, than the West Coast, and like it becomes a defense mechanism of you're not like me, and like there could be some original biological stuff that's like, you don't look like me, like you're a threat, because those things exist. But now, like, really the only threat that exists is the hatred. Unless you're that one random island where people can't go because they've lived in isolation and we would wipe them out, like, yeah, we're a threat to them, no matter who you are. And it gets real interesting, and it does get very political. And that's where, you know, circling back to TAC and what we do and why I enjoy being here, is there is that focus that, no, this is about being inclusive and giving everyone a place where they can learn and practice and be themselves. And that doesn't always exist in other places. We squirreled hard on that one.
We really did. I ran out of my ADHD meds, and I don't have my appointment to get the refill until Thursday.
I'm just that traditional ADHD person that's like, oh, you have ADHD? Here, remember to take this pill every day at the same time.
You're supposed to take it at the same time?
Within the same 24-hour period.
Well,
yeah.
I'm not good at taking pills. I'm like, why can't you guys just give me a shot? And they're like, no.
Can you put it in like a lollipop? I'll remember the lollipop.
Yeah. That would be so funny. Or like in a vape, that would make it so much easier.
Well, I think after the army, you know, I'm sure you can get stuff that'll help you innovate.
Yeah, but I don't like that because it makes me too slow.
But we're ADHD. Does it make you slow, or does it make you think like everyone else?
Well, I don't know.
You naturally have an octane booster that goes on in your brain. Like, that's what the ADHD meds is. It doesn't, it's like those jokes of like the kids going to like the high school parties and everybody's popping pills, and it's like, I just took an Adderall. I didn't get high. I just get to be normal.
Yeah. Oh my God. It was funny because I was talking to my therapist. I was like, I have done extensive research on this because I have been in my 20s before the military. I may have had a little bit of an alcohol problem because I found out it slowed my brain down to the point where I could function as a normal person. Could I drive? No.
The comorbidity of it is that you have a substance abuse problem that is indicative to the medical condition. Yes. Well, I'm aware.
Exactly.
I read the DSM-5 with supplements for fun. Like,
yeah.
I just want to understand. And then you're like, wait a second, this is a comorbidity problem? Why did no one tell me? They just told me that I was hyperactive. Like, no, it is not hyperactive. I have a dopamine regulation issue, and I'm seeking excitement. Like, this is not the same thing.
Yeah, and it's really frustrating because, like, I like to brew beer, and that's great. But now that I have that awareness, I can forcefully limit myself on things, which is great. However, in my 20s, I was younger and dumber and didn't know I had ADHD. I didn't know until this year, actually. I guess anyone else could have told me, but it didn't click up here because I was like, no, I'm fine. My mom said I'm normal.
The original DSM-5 was 30-year-old white men with college educations. Like, it doesn't account for all of the things.
Yeah,
again, like, I read it for fun.
That's awesome. All right, let me see how we can get back.
Yeah, we squirreled so hard.
Again, okay, all right, so the next group of questions we're kind of going to skip over. If you are interested in learning about David's experience as a DRGL in the military, unique challenges and opportunities that come with being a Norse pagan in the military, or how Dave's military experience has shaped his approach to leadership, be sure to check out episode 3 titled Faith and Service, Norse Pagan Leadership in the Military with David Nix.
So anybody listening, if you're a military member, Hopefully by the time you are listening to this, there should be a blog post for Military Monday about travel altar kits. I think that's something we talked about in episode 3, but never finalized.
Yeah.
So that's something, for our members to look forward to and go check out.
Yeah.
Might cause some controversy. I'll let you proofread it before we post it.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, you're serving in the military, you're helping run this nonprofit, you have family responsibilities, and you're pursuing school. How do you manage all of it?
With ADHD, not very well. Deadlines help. No, so I think, balancing the religion with personal life. And I think we touched on it somewhat in episode 3. In the summer, I have a very heavy Vanir practice. Couple of container grows for potatoes and green beans and peas and some other things. And then because we bought our house in 2015, raised garden beds to be able to have outdoor altars and have perennials that are coming back. During the winter is more of my Asatru, my Asir focused stuff, more meditations, more lifestyle stuff. And then as far as balancing the family with everything, luckily school's online, which makes it easy to balance. Like, all right, you're working on homework, I'm going to work on homework. I just finished my bachelor's and immediately rolled into the master's, and I'll talk about that in the future of what I'm looking to do with it. But trying to finish the master's so I can roll in the doctorate program. Post-Army, I'm looking to be a college professor, but then actually having access to the academic networks to pursue some future careers and future opportunities that I would love to talk about. I think it's like question 7. What's the future? Balance with all of this plus ADHD is having a schedule. There are days that are dedicated to certain things for a reason, and it goes on the calendar so that I can see and be reminded of this is what we're going to work on. Talking traditional values, I'm lucky enough that my wife is currently a stay-at-home mom, so that helps with the work-life balance of wife and kids are always home, so I can focus on the other things. And that's not to say that she doesn't pursue her own stuff. She actually has an associate's in pharmacology. And then after this deployment, we'll re-enter the workforce as I look for other things to do. But my son is 5 and we know he has ADHD. So we're talking through those things. It's been a very difficult first couple years trying to establish him and then not raise him the way, I was raised or she was raised, where it's like, get the belt. Like, all right, Let's talk about your feelings. Let's talk about what's going on. Oh, you're not speaking. Let's go to speech therapy. And then I make the joke about reading the DSM-5, but I have a 13-year-old daughter as well. And it's like, all right, cool. You're struggling with your emotions. Do you want to talk to us or would you like to talk to a therapist? And she goes every 2 weeks to a therapist to be able to actually have independent conversations about her feelings. So trying to raise the next generation better than we were raised with a switch and a belt.
That's awesome though, because showing her while she's young that therapy isn't...
It's not bad.
It's not bad. Everybody thinks therapy is, if you go to therapy, you're crazy. Like, no, it can help you learn. I would love
a grippy sock vacation.
Yeah, right? But also
3 to 5 days of not have to deal with anybody? All right. But I mean, it's understanding that you can have a professional conversation with someone that can help you develop coping mechanisms. The Army tried that with the MRT program, the Master Resiliency Trainers, not well received, not very well executed. There's some new stuff with the medics that they're implementing. It's like MC Gears or something. There's some new stuff, but I think generationally it's getting into the realization that we're not developing children to cope, to deal and understand. So yeah, if you're having mental health trouble, there's nothing wrong with going and seeking mental health treatment. It's not a bad thing. Even if you're in the military, I'm a SETC grad. When we talk about, the alcohol stuff, I've done the alcohol counseling, which is also really funny. And then behavioral health, and I'm at 19 and a half years of service. I've had some issues with it, not affecting my career, affecting a deployment. And in some ways, looking back on it, I understand the reasons, but at the same time, it's frustrating. But it's not going to hold you back as long as you're actually doing the treatment. So just something to keep in mind. We scored a little again. My bad.
It's okay, but those are all very valid points. Okay. What strategies or routines help you stay grounded and maintain your spiritual practice amid the chaos?
My Vanir practice definitely helps keep me grounded. So I think, is North Carolina zone 3, zone 4? I have to go look. Very early spring. It has helped keep me grounded in time and space because I know when the last frost is going to be. I know what I need to be doing. And, maybe if you upload photos and stuff like that, I'll send you photos. I have God poles out in my yard. I took chicken wire and then filled it with stones and put my God poles around it. So I actually have outdoor altars where I can go leave my offerings. It helps to stay grounded checking on the plants. It's going to go through its life cycle. You're going to have to do work. you're going to have to plan for next year, especially with container growing, understanding that you've got to replenish the soil and look for new ways to keep them invigorated and healthy. Definitely helps literally stay grounded. Just barefoot in the dirt, like, all right, this is what I'm doing. Very helpful. Yeah. Seasonal depression is a thing. I definitely hate the winter. Everything's dead. But yeah, those first buds start showing up. It's definitely helpful to stay grounded in all of this.
I agree with that. I have house plants, and not these. These are all fake. These are just for my mental health. Like, I don't have to care for them. They just are always green.
Indoor growing is something I've got to get better at. I've got a couple snake plants and stuff like that, but
yeah, I'm not great at it. I forget to water things, and I've put it in my schedule. I have a reminder that tells me when to take my trash out to the curb, because I forgot that too many times, and that was a really bad time.
Luckily, mine comes twice a week.
Yep, my water the plants reminder, and whenever I stop and actually do it, it is really cool. And then I notice my plants are really happy about it, but my indoor plants, it's pothos. So you can tell when you're watering it good because you see all the new, it grows like a weed. But if you forget, it's very resilient for a while, and then it starts to be very sad.
Yeah, that's something I want to get better at, is some of the indoor stuff. But we bought our house in 2015, and that was not where my head was at. So we have no good windows that like get consistent sunlight. So I got to look into artificial lights and figuring all of that out, which may also help with the, the seasonal depression of like, oh, look, I'm actually getting vitamin D from this random plant light that's over my head.
I live in a very hot place. Everybody on the podcast who listens regularly knows that I live in El Paso, Texas right now. And we have huge windows. And I'm like, why do we have huge windows? It is hot here. It's regularly over 100 degrees in the beginning of June.
How was that most recent sandstorm, by the way, where street sweepers couldn't even keep up?
No.
I have friends down there too, so.
Feel like there's no way around it. I resealed my door, and I still have to, there's so much sand on the inside of my house. My cats have a water filter because the water's hard here in their little fountain, and I cleaned it out the other day, and there was so much sand in it, and I was just like, this isn't even by the door. This is away.
Oh yeah,
and it's still sand.
It's kind of
everywhere.
Like the pollen here in North Carolina, where it's just like, why is there yellow pollen in the house? Like, oh, good Lord.
Yes, exactly. Sand, it's everywhere. You can't escape it. It's not even worth trying anymore. Okay, what advice would you give others trying to balance spiritual leadership with everyday life?
Asatru to me is a lifestyle. In order to best balance it, it has to be built into your routines. My altars are in the bedroom, so I see them every day when I'm doing. I have indoor altars and outdoor altars, but trying to live healthier and that conversation, add more medication, cholesterol issues, thanks poor genes, I have to do oatmeal. And in order to spice up the oatmeal, I'll dehydrate fruits and stuff like that. So keeping it in that practice and being able to balance that, I have found ways to integrate my offerings into what I'm doing. So in honor of the land Vanir, I have shot glasses dedicated to the house spirits and the land Vanir, and anytime I open a new bottle of something, I give them that offering. Anytime I'm processing fruit for oats to dehydrate, that is when I make my offerings to the gods and the goddesses and put that out as well. In order to balance all of that, it has to be built into the routine. And then even with learning, I think we may have talked about it before, the Gothi that I had here was very extreme, and he would get up at 4 a.m, take the caffeine pill, go back to sleep for 30 minutes, and then go do his readings and workouts. You can go to the full extremes or that balance of my morning coffee, I've got to get better back into it, but my morning practice, before my son was waking up at 5:30 every morning and just being like, Dad, YouTube, Minecraft. That's when I did my runic meditations. Just being able to actually sit there for 30 minutes and just focus on a rune. Participating in a little bit of escapism right now, so I'm really hard into Warhammer. So before my most recent trip into the 40K universe, I alternate books to maintain that balance. So I'll read a saga, and then when I finish the saga, I'll read a fiction book to enjoy reading again, and just kind of that back and forth. The amount of reading that I do for college is kind of taking that away. So I more so focus on reading college during the day, and then at night it's all right, I'm gonna let my brain shut down, and we're for the Emperor. Let's see what the Space Marines are doing.
Yeah.
But you have to find the balance by creating a maintainable rhythm. So if that's something that people are struggling with, the best way to do it is just integrate it into your life. I start my morning at the coffee pot. That's where the runes stay. I'm going to make a cup of coffee. I'll pull a rune. Like, what are we looking at, reflecting on today? And then...
That's actually really brilliant.
Yeah, because it's the first thing you're doing. And while you're waiting on the coffee to brew, you just grab one, look at it, and go, okay, like this is what we're going to look at today.
That's
really
smart.
Better than mindless TikTok. Yeah, you just have to find ways to integrate it into. So then, like, all of the skeletal injuries and stuff like that from jumping out of airplanes, you know, drawing the rune and then having a yoga mat in the kitchen, like coffee's brewing, it's cooling off. I'm going to go through my yoga routine. And then when I'm doing my box breathing, I'm focused on what's that rune? What does it focus on? Inhaling and focusing on it. Runic meditation is not a thing. Like it's a made up thing. I'm sure people have encountered it, but you know, the reaching for the mountains in the yoga pose is still reaching, you know, for a higher purpose. And you can integrate that. So for me, if someone's looking to balance, is just integrating it into your life. That'd be my recommendation.
That's great. The last episode, I was interviewing the author of Runes of the Futhark, right? And she was talking about keeping, like, if you carry a purse or something like that, carrying them with you throughout the day. That way you can pull a rune at any time if you need a little bit of grounding. I love talking to people and hearing like where they keep their runes when they do their pull a rune practice, you know?
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Well, I mean, I won't pull runes for every occasion just to be like, oh, I'm struggling with this. What's the universe telling me? But if you can, I mean, on the back wall, you can see it if you're on a video. I make malas. So I will pull particular stones for whatever purpose they serve to kind of help ground. And then I'll wear that mala. And the way I break mine up, the recommendation actually came from something I saw on Instagram years ago, but they're broken up into the Ets. So it's 8 beads, a center stone to let you know that you've reached the next Et, and then you follow the Ets along. So if you're doing Galder, you've got that pace count basically to be able to cycle through and memorize and reflect. That's how I've integrated as malas into jewelry for everyday use. Just being able to stay grounded. ADHD's kicking in. I just want to go get all the shiny things and show you like a crow. Hard.
I squirrel hard. Really want, oh my God. I don't have like an official logo for the podcast. I just use the TAC logo. I feel like
do something with like Ratatas.
Yes. Yeah. Have him like on the tree and just like looking like deranged.
Because we can pick this back up and then you can add this stuff, right? Just as like small snippets. So when Fort Bragg changed to Liberty, we had to redo the Facebook page and like what we called ourselves, because originally we were the Fort Bragg and Pope Air Force Base Asatru community, and then Pope went away. So we went with flag, Fort Liberty Asatru group. So we took a raven banner and had a Viking squirrel holding a spear in place of the raven, and then it just said flag on the edge of it. And that was our logo for a while. And now that we're back to Fort Bragg, it's kind of gone away. But yeah, I met a woman while we were on our last cruise that does taxidermy stuff for fun, like punk rock taxidermy. And I had her contact information, and we almost had a Viking squirrel made holding a raven banner as the community mascot.
That is so cool.
And I think we talked about it. Like we do our first heathen time and our last heathen time so that people can just do their thing.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, I noticed when we have our things, put it in my day as a 2-hour time block on Sundays, and it ends up being a 3-hour event. But I recently got an apprentice. I'm basically training him to be what I am.
How do you plan the group? How do you run the group? Yeah.
Yeah, I made a whole contract. And I was like, just so you know, these are the expectations. This is what you can expect from me. Eventually, you will write your own ritual. So I told him, we are equals. I am not better than you. You are not better than me. I am showing you my process. And you're basically getting like a hands-on learning of being a Gothar, even though like I'm done with everything that is out, but I don't think that means I'm graduated. I don't know what that means, because I know
we got to do the laying of the hands ritual.
Yeah.
Well, so we ran into that with my group where
I think I've graduated to your group. I'm in your group now.
So
because I was the only one who finished cohort 1 in my group. I'm done with cohort 2.
I think I owe 1 or 2 things in cohort 2 that got added, so we can start cohort 3. But we ran into that with my group and we talked about it in podcast 3, where there is a delineation between when I am a TAC representative and when I represent the garrison. And we had to go through that where it's like one of the guys that we talked about, like, hey man, you're super smart, teach all day long. But at the end of the day, I'm responsible for the group. because I represent the garrison command, and being able to step in and go, okay, what's our left and rights? When do we need to move this off post? What do we want to do? And like starting our own kindred and stuff like that, of like, where does the off post start and the on post end? It gets interesting.
Yeah, I would say that's a hard thing, and that's hard for me too right now, because I can't do the DRGL thing. My apprentice is actually going to do that. Oh, I need to ask that of you. I need a recommendation letter.
This is one of the things that we ran into here, was at a certain point, in order to advance the community and your own personal practice, you have to get away from the military, where it's like you have people rotating in, and you'll like, especially if you're looking at the land and having a hawk there, that becomes a resource for people outside.
Yeah.
To be like, hey, I want to go visit this. Or
I couldn't build a house here. It's too hot.
You could. Well,
no,
but
for
I mean,
me
that
personally.
Again, that gets into cultivating the land. Like if you look at Hatch, New Mexico, it's the same zone, but because of the way they use the water, it's a lot better. But either way.
That wraps up part 1 of our conversation, but don't worry, there's more to come in part 2. My guest has such a deep connection to his Vanir practice that I'm honestly a little envious. I mean, I only know how to grow plants in 2 farming zones. I'm from Alaska and I've lived in Arkansas, so that's all I got. I don't know how to grow in the desert. He could probably get a tomato to thrive out here in the desert. So if you've enjoyed the insight and the storytelling so far, be sure to tune in next time for even more wisdom, laughter, and maybe even a little dirt under the fingernails magic. Until then, stay grounded and stay fruitful. Thank you so much for joining us on Fireside Frith. If you have any questions, stories, or reflections you'd like to share, we'd love to hear from you at podcast@theasatrucommunity.com. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and check out our socials at Fireside Frith Pod or theasatrucommunity.com. Until next time, may your hearth be warm and your path be guided by frith and wisdom.